I'm Sara Brumfield with From the Page. I'm here today with Ben,
Yep.
who's my partner, and we wanted to tell you about all the things we've learned from, really, we're hitting a decade of running crowdsourcing projects.
Or two.
Or two. Yeah, it's getting pretty big. We will send out a follow-up email that will have a link to a recording of this and has a resource list with links to the things we mentioned. So don't feel like you have to try to grab them as we talk about them. Next slide. Oh, that is an old one.
That's an old one, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are going to talk today about what From the Page is, our crowdsourcing platform. We think a lot of the stuff that we talk about in this webinar is applicable to many other platforms, so it's kind of broad.
Soft skills.
Soft skills and things. So we talk about what effective crowdsourcing is. We encourage you to think about your volunteers, how to select material, developing your instructions, your transcription conventions, kicking off your project, keeping volunteers engaged, and then at the end we are happy to take Q&A and do some show and tell of different projects on From the Page.
All right. So Sara and I run From the Page. So it's a platform for doing crowdsourcing projects with historic documents, so archives and special collections. So typically we focus on textual activities like manuscript transcription, OCR correction, translation, indexing, things like that. But again, we're focusing really on the soft skills here. So, you know, if you're running some photo identification project or geo-rectification project, those probably, you know, hopefully some of these lessons will apply to those as well. We've been doing crowdsourcing for 20 years now, and so we have learned quite a few things. We want to share some of the things we have learned with you. So as I mentioned, our platform is focused on archival material, and as you can see, it's really simple. We have a image of a page on one side of a screen and a place for a transcript on another side of the screen, right? And the reason that we do that is that for our platform and most other software platforms, most other crowdsourcing platforms, we're asking humans to do something really hard, transcribing text, right? We don't need complex software interfaces for them to learn as well. Right, so keeping your platform simple, keeping your software simple is really important. So here's a handful of the institutions that we've worked with over the years. This is, I think, just a subset of ones that we've met through the AAAF consortium. So let's talk about effective crowdsourcing. So in my opinion, effective crowdsourcing is a collaboration between a memory institution and the public. And the goal is deep public engagement with special collections and archives to enhance metadata in ways an institution couldn't itself. So when I say deep engagement, let's talk about that. So lots of institutions have social media accounts, and they are fantastic for broad engagement, right? You can post a picture that people will share and see all over the place. It really raises your brand awareness, the awareness of the institution, the kind of materials you might have that people don't know about. But the opportunity for the public to contribute back the things they know, what they're passionate about, their knowledge, their experience with the institution is generally pretty limited, right? It's limited to a comment or a like button. So deep engagement is where crowdsourcing comes in. So in addition to being about engagement, crowdsourcing is about creating metadata, enhancing these special collections and archives in ways that are typically impossible for software to do, impossible for an organization to do. This requires massive amounts of human interpretation. Typically, no one working at a library and archives has as a job be a scholarly editor. Take the papers of someone or another and transcribe them and produce an edition that is usable, right? That's not within the institution's remit. It's not within the organization's priorities. And no matter
Or
how
budget.
much, or budget,
Right.
no matter how much we might want that, right? If you talk to your typical archivist and say, well, hey, you've got this material that's already been scanned, we've already got metadata, it'd be great if you transcribed it, and they're staring at a wall with 60 totally unprocessed collections that don't even have finding aids for them, right? It's hard to justify doing that work. So that is where volunteers can really come in and help out. And this is a good example here, right? This is
This is an orchidologist notebook from the Chicago Botanic Garden and Library and Archive. And what I think is interesting is it requires what we think of as kind of massive amounts of human interpretation, but not actually a lot of text. In this case, they found a volunteer who was comfortable with orchids with scientific names in Latin. This notebook was actually written in German, so anything that wasn't in Latin was in German. So massive amounts of interpretation, human interpretation. That's a lot of effort and specialized knowledge, but not necessarily massive amounts of
we're not talking about
people
10,000 volunteers. We're not talking about 100,000 images. We're just talking about something that really is not something that the organization can justify doing.
But it's special, right?
It's special,
Yeah.
important, and really valuable.
Yeah, and they actually got a grant to do this particular project because it was a treasure, right? Something that was special and different.
Right. So, crowdsourcing projects are really only possible with the interpretation of, with the guidance of knowledge professionals, right? You cannot get the public to do your homework for you, right? Crowdsourcing is not free labor.
That doesn't work. We put a picture of a puppy on the slide because we have this joke that crowdsourcing is not free as in beer or free as in speech, but is free as in puppy, which is you get a lot of volunteer effort, but you have to take care of it. You have to, provide it with guidance. It's a puppy. It takes some work.
Yeah, we have a friend who says, people think that the volunteers will do their homework for them, but really, they've just gotten a brand new set of homework they were not prepared for.
Which doesn't mean that you can't get a massive amount of work from volunteers and really enhance your collections. It's just you can't do it without any effort.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the work that goes into these successful crowdsourcing projects. So we're going to start with volunteers, because if you don't have volunteers, you're not going to have a successful crowdsourcing project, right? So I used to actually have just one slide on this, and now I have like 4, because volunteers are so important to crowdsourcing. So this is a snapshot of a week on FromThePage. This was right after we had hit our 2 millionth page transcribed. And over that week, we had 450 volunteers working on that platform. When we look across a year, we have at least 5,000. It's interesting because a lot of, it's got diminishing returns. We got some people who are doing a lot, and 1% of our users, our volunteers, work on 5 or more different collections, possibly from different institutions. 85% of them work on just one collection. So it's just interesting to look at the data and to think about the human involvement that it represents. When you post your material on FromThePage and one of these volunteers finds it and starts working on it, we want that to happen, right? So what we work hard on is making that happen. We give volunteers ways to find interesting, active, well-managed projects. Projects are tagged so they can look by subject. We send out monthly newsletters to volunteers who've opted in featuring our new projects. It turns out one of the most popular way to find projects is we've got new projects listed on our transcriber landing page, and people love new projects. They'll go poke in on that all the time. And if they like it, they'll stick around. If it seems like you've done a good job giving them guidance and you respond to questions and things like that, then they'll hang out.
And they're interested in the material, right?
They might not be, they don't have to stay around, so it's kind of up to them. Yeah. But we also suggest that you work to recruit volunteers from your community. We find that they are the most dedicated volunteers. They're the ones that have ties to your location or your material or the subject of your material. Maybe there are people who have volunteered with your organization in the past, but now are homebound for caretaking purposes or health purposes, or just want to do more work, but not necessarily come in. So that's what, that's the balance to think about. And there's lots of different ways to find volunteers. So this is a picture of some of the Library of Virginia's volunteers at their, okay, let me pause. Library of Virginia has one of the biggest, best crowdsourcing programs in the US, possibly in the world, probably in the world, yeah. And so they hold an annual transcribiversary, and that's in addition to running, we'll talk about these later, but transcribathons twice a month. But what I love about this is that you look at this picture of the people who showed up to their annual transcribiversary, which, you know, they served cake and they showed them the primary sources and things. But I love how diverse they are. We know volunteers on From the Page tend to skew older. Retirees love these types of projects. But Library of Virginia has a lot of students that work with them as well, which is really cool. So you need to start by thinking, where can we find volunteers? Who will they be? Do you already have volunteers that work with your institution? Do you have people who are local who are interested? Can you go talk to your local history society or genealogy society? Who knows, right? You will find people who are interested in your material and want to help out. Maybe you're deep on a particular subject matter and you can reach out to communities around that subject matter. We did an early project with the Yaquina Head Lighthouses. They had lighthouse keepers logs from over decades, and they were able to engage with lighthouse fans. Turns out there's a lot of people who are very enthusiastic about lighthouses, and they have those people come in virtually and work on transcribing for them. When you think about volunteers, you can also think about what material has been most popular with your patrons and why is it popular. So this image is a volunteer with the Missouri State Archives holding her grandfather's death certificate. Genealogists love projects with lots of names and vital information, even if the material is not as engaging as a diary or a letter. We've seen some very successful projects with heritage organizations like the Daughters of the American Revolution. They often are looking for service hours. Sometimes they're competing for service hours. So it's often very fruitful to have a partnership with an organization like that. So the last thing to realize is that crowdsourcing is not something you're familiar with, potentially, right? If you haven't done a lot of it, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. But it may also be something that your volunteers are not familiar with. It's a bit intimidating, right? So if you think about how to make it easier for them, that puts you in a good mindset for working with your volunteers. And what we see is that volunteers and transcribers get really into this type of work. It's fun, it's engaging. The image on the screen represents the most active transcribers, so people who've done at least 10 pages, on 3 different projects. One at the Indiana Archives, one at the Library of Virginia, and one at the California State Library. What you see here is that while the bulk of their most active transcribers were independent, there were overlaps. So there are some volunteers who go from project to project. All of these projects happen to be World War I projects. So you find people who are very into World War I, they finish up Virginia's project, and then they're like, oh, what else is there around here that we could do that's World War I related? We have one volunteer who about once a month will look through all of our new projects looking for something she hasn't worked on. She'll hop in, she'll try something new. Sometimes she finds something she's really interested in and goes deep and contributes a lot. And sometimes she does a page or 2 and moves on.
But she has worked on every single project, I believe, on the site that's public. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
So let's say that you're thinking about volunteers. That's one side of the equation, but the other side of the equation is, what material are you going to post on a crowdsourcing platform? Volunteers are motivated by a lot of things. Not every volunteer is motivated by the same thing. So we recommend you choose material that can tell a good story, provide an immersive experience, or contains local history or genealogy information. So one thing that you can look for is material that can tell good stories. So if you get started reading a diary, you want to turn the page and find out what happens next. So those provide this intrinsic motivation through the narrative momentum. Volunteers build a connection with the people in the story. And as you can see in this email that I received in a project that I run, in which a volunteer who's on another continent from the diarist is asking, what's going on here with this one person in this household, Josie? The diarist, Julia, is so worried about her health, glad other people are visiting, the doctor came, I want to know what happens next, right? That's really powerful. So letters and diaries have immersion that comes through this narrative momentum, but not every immersive experience has to have has to be narrative, right? This is an example of a project that the Alabama State Archives ran, which was indexing World War I service cards, right? So they've got a card for every single service member from Alabama who served in World War I. Now, these were organized by county, which means that someone working on Coffee County, Alabama, if they were from Coffee County, Alabama, or had family from Coffee County, Alabama, they're getting a snapshot of their community, this community they're connected to in 1918. They're seeing familiar family names, they're seeing familiar place names, they might be seeing relatives. It's really, really immersive, and there's no narrative whatsoever, right? So, lastly, we talked about material that's really motivating for genealogists. Those can be things that aren't that immersive, right? This is the Indianapolis Public Library's register of schools in the city of children in schools in the city of Indianapolis. And this is dry as dust, at least to me, right? You've got a list of students. On a different page, there's the parents' names, when someone enrolls, when they leave, where they came from, where they went to. It's boring, but it's a genealogical gold mine, right? This is incredibly valuable. Genealogists all have benefited from online databases produced from material like this, and they want to contribute back because they do understand the value to these and the purpose.
Yeah, we also find that if you can give your volunteers a sense of accomplishment, that's very motivating. We're all motivated by checking things off a list. So think of that World War I service card project. It was very successful because, among other things, the Alabama Department of Archives and History just asked people to get about 5 fields from each card. So a transcriber could get a lot done, right? We like to get things done, and that feeling of accomplishment kept them coming back. That particular project was 111,000 World War I service cards. They transcribed them in 2.5 months. And I think that's because their material hit so many of these points. They had great relationships with their local genealogy and history organizations, and were actually able to match them county by county to things that needed to be transcribed. It was immersive. They got a feeling of accomplishment. So, yeah, it was an amazing project. They were really pleased. We were really amazed too.
It didn't hurt that the cards were typewritten.
No, that didn't hurt either.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. So.
Okay, after you've selected the material that you want to work with, the next step is to come up with instructions for the volunteers to do your crowdsourcing task. Since we focus primarily on transcription, that means defining transcription conventions. So the minute that anyone transcribing a document encounters non-standard spelling, or something that's hard to read, or the hidden abbreviation or a superscript, they're going to have questions, and we want you to have those answered, right, for those volunteers. So we actually show transcription conventions on the transcription screen itself, right below the place people type, so they can consult that right there. So we all understand why having instructions are important, but how do you develop instructions? One of the things we recommend is that you sit down and take a couple of pages and transcribe them yourself. Now, there's a couple of things you can do with that. One of those is to use those as an example, right? Point people to that so that people who don't want to read the manual have an example to look at. But the other thing that's really important is that as you transcribe the material, right, as you work through those pages, you're going to encounter problems that your volunteers will encounter that you haven't thought of yet. What do you do about illustrations? Well, I didn't know that there were going to be sketches and diagrams in this. I didn't know there were going to be doodles. Well, you don't encounter that until you try doing the task yourself. The same thing the volunteers are going to do. Excuse me. After you develop your first round of conventions, The next thing to do is to iterate, and we recommend grabbing someone else, right? Someone else in your organization, someone else who's working with different material, and asking them to do the task. Give them some new pages, ask them to transcribe. Sit there with them and listen to the questions that they ask, right? You may be really familiar with the material. Find someone who isn't, because their experience is going to match that of your volunteers, and you can flesh out those transcription conventions based on that experience. You've got this kind of mini transcribe-a-thon thing going on with these other people in your organization. Okay, in addition to using other people in your organization or new volunteers as kind of a soft launch, these are also great ways, these transcribe-a-thons, in person, sit down, let's do this together, are great ways to kick off your project. Right. Library of Virginia does a transcribe-a-thon 2 times a month, one online and one in person. You don't have to do that. You can just do one at the beginning of your project and bring in people who you think might be leaders within the field, the subject matter, the community, local historical organizations. Do an in-person transcribe-a-thon. What this does is it lets you give hands-on instruction, get people over the hump and over this discomfort of, what am I doing here? Is my work good enough, right? Once they're confident, they're able to bring that confidence and that knowledge back to their communities. And that's so important.
I love this picture. It's it's part of the University of Virginia's Julian Bond Transcribe-a-thon that they hosted in 2019. Everyone's so intent on getting it right.
So transcribe-a-thons can actually also be a way to promote the project. This is a couple of examples of transcribe-a-thons that are promoted on social media, and what I find really interesting about them is that they're not being promoted by the institutions who are running the project, right? The New Orleans Jazz Museum was working on a transcribe-a-thon, working on colonial French documents, and you see a Facebook post by the French department at Tulane saying, hey, anybody here in New Orleans who's interested in French, check this thing out. We've got another great example here on the right-hand side where the Parker Library at Corpus Christi College, Cambridge is doing a transcribe-a-thon with medieval Latin documents, and one of the participants is posting on Twitter saying, woohoo, I'm getting a crash course in Latin paleography here. Isn't that great? You can do online transcribe-a-thons. Library of Virginia does this often. They are harder to organize, right? But they can be successful. This was a really interesting example of a transcribe-a-thon that was run in parallel with a online conference, a virtual conference on medieval manuscripts. And the people organized the conference. This is, during lockdowns, and they had organized it many times. They said, well, it's easy to replicate the conference experience of presentations. It's hard to replicate the experience of chatting with people in the hallway, getting together to conspire to do something. So what they did is they ran a transcribe-a-thon in parallel with the conference so that participants in the conference could peel away and work on this one same medieval French document together. And they ended up transcribing and translating the whole thing and coming up with something publishable at the end of the 3-day conference. It was pretty amazing.
So you don't have to run a transcribe-a-thon to kick off your project. It's not required or necessary. It's just one way to reach people, and it's kind of a fun way to reach people. But you should think about how you should kick off your project and do some outreach and marketing around it. So if you have existing outreach venues, if you have mailing lists, if you have social media accounts, you should definitely use those and mention and publish and push your project. If you have a physical location, you can do handouts, flyers at a checkout desk in a public library. You can also look for subject matter enthusiast communities, people who would be interested in your material and might not be local. We often find that kind of expats are your most passionate volunteers because they miss the place that they came from. On Facebook, you can find different groups. Sometimes there's magazines. We have a whole post that we provide in the follow-up email that kind of can help you think about that. It turns out that the most successful way to do outreach, there's been some academic research on this in the last year or two, is actually your email list, right? If your organization has any sort of outreach email newsletter or list or anything like that, that is more effective than social media, than radio, than TV, anything that the researchers in this case tried.
One of the reasons for that is that you've got people who are already interested and already connected to your organization. They also are more likely to get the names right? Because
They have that
already
local
know.
context, right?
And in fact, one of our earliest projects didn't even have a mailing list, but they were a reference library who was responding to research inquiries, and they just added to their signature, oh, hey, you might be interested in checking this out. And someone who was researching 19th century Texas suddenly jumped into a project and was able to finish the entire thing before it even went public because of adding that to the response to the research inquiry.
We've also seen local news channels pick up these projects, both print and television. And they're interesting, right? They're visual, so you have cool old documents, you have people they can come in and take pictures of, and they're feel-good stories. They're a way for the local community to contribute to your mission of preserving memories. So this is actually coverage by the local TV station of the Seattle Municipal Archives Project, and this is their archivist, Jeannie Fisher. And I just, it's a great shot, right? You've got the old city documents, you've got your archivist, and it's this call to participate.
Yeah, this was a fun little 1 or 2 minute story. University of South Dakota last year had coverage in their local news station that devoted an entire feature, like a 5-minute long block, to explaining how people could find the website, how they could transcribe. We were kind of blown away by that. It was really cool.
It was really neat. The North Carolina State Archives, when they launched their Colonial Court Records project, they had coverage in 2 large newspapers. So it happened around the holidays, right? Slow news days, and it brought in a lot of interested volunteers. Those days were actually the highest number of visits to From the Page's website for that entire year. But yeah, newspapers were interested.
Yes, that's right, for the same reasons.
Yes. Okay, so once you kick off a project and you're starting to get volunteers working on it, you kind of need to figure out how to keep them engaged. It's really not unusual to have volunteers drop by, transcribe a page, and you may never see them again, right? They're tire kickers. We have a couple of suggestions for keeping some of those volunteers engaged, because the more you can keep, the more you'll accomplish. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, welcoming new users. So that's our first suggestion. And so we send out a note every night to each project owner telling them what's gone on in their collections that previous day. You'll get something like the screenshot at the bottom where it shows the name of someone who joined your particular project. You can also go to the collaborator tab and see who joined, and you can grab their email addresses if they've opted in, send them an email. It can be a stock email, and it's good to tell them what the project is, the purpose. Volunteers really like purpose. What the material is going to be used for. If you have any training materials, you can link to your help tab and your transcription conventions and include how to contact you. You want them to be able to ask you questions or share something they've found or see if they can bring in a group of 20 other people to help you transcribe. All of those things you want them to be able to find you, so make it easy. So in addition to welcoming new users, that nightly email will also include comments and questions from your collaborators, from the volunteers who are transcribing for you.
Yeah, so you look on the right-hand side here, the comments from your collaborators. This is a snapshot of comments that came in on one of the projects that we run overnight. And one of the things that's interesting is not every comment is a question, right? We were talking earlier about this deep public engagement with the public responding with their knowledge. Here's a volunteer saying, okay, well, this Fowler's potion or Fowler's solution that's mentioned in the text is actually this kind of remedy or tonic, right? And explaining what that is. And then she asks about what a word means, right? So there's this interesting kind of place for discussion, and that can be really invaluable. So it's important to respond to those questions. And there's an example, you look on the lower left, where on the Lighthouse Project, a volunteer, Olivia, is transcribing and says, there's a lot of activity around a hack. They clean it on the 12th, they paint it on the 21st, 22nd, they varnish it. What is a hack? Okay, so Olivia's note is going to show up in the email for the people running the project. They respond to this next day saying, we have no idea, right? That is wonderful, right? That is a best practice because the volunteer sees that and knows that someone is on the other end of the line, is paying attention to what they're doing, cares about their work, values their contributions. And then the following day, the people running the project respond and say, we did some more research and looked up hack boat, and it turns out it is a small boat used for general purpose, which is obviously something you would need if you were running a lighthouse. So that is, yeah.
The sort of thing, right, that you get in those emails, and that best practices for keeping your volunteers engaged. The other thing that we recommend is that you include your contact information. So we have a footer that shows up on every page of your project. This one's from the LA County Library, and they link to their Facebook and where they are on Twitter and Instagram, and that questions contact us as a mail to form where you can email them if you have questions. So, every possible way for people who, might want to reach out to you can find them. So the other thing we recommend is that you send a newsletter. It doesn't have to be complicated or that big, and really you can decide if it's worth doing based on whether you're still getting a lot of activity on your project or not. And whatever cadence seems best. Once a month would be great if you want to keep a project moving along steadily, but if you can only go out once a quarter, that's okay too. You can pull in a list of all your collaborator emails from the project overview and from the page, and you can just paste that into your email client as BCC, or if you use something like MailChimp or Constant Contact, you can pull them in there. And we actually have blog posts we send out with some examples of what different people have done for crowdsourcing project newsletters. A lot of it depends on just how big your project is, how much you're trying to get done, how quickly you're trying to get it done. So lots of different examples of how to do that. So we individually benefit, all of our institutions benefit from the work done by our volunteers, but the entire historical community benefits when we have better public awareness of and appreciation for what you do. So crowdsourcing invites people to join you in doing that and gives them a personal connection. So we'd encourage you to just get started, right? We do a 200-page free trial. We can host a 30-minute quick start call to get you up and running, to get that material pulled in, help you with your transcription conventions. We'll put it in our monthly newsletter. Really, it's just try. Because you'll learn so much by doing even just a small 200-page trial and seeing how it works, right? What happens? And if it doesn't work, fine. If it does work, hopefully you'll do more.
So that's the end of our presentation. I'm going to stop my screen, and we're a small enough group. If anyone wants to just unmute themselves if you have questions, we can also take questions in the chat or comments.
And we're going to share our screen in a little bit and kind of show you some of the active projects on FromThePage right now, different types of things.
Shanna?
I'm going to just jump in. Excuse me. I am writing a grant for a county historical museum to transcribe a register from a hotel, and we're looking at place names. So I'm a cartographer, I'm a historical GIS person. So super excited about the project. So I'm just thinking about how much to write into the grant for the subscription so I can see the amounts. Is it reasonable can I get us, and honestly, I think we have 145 pages, but I'd like to write it in. Do I have to do a full year? Can I do a couple of months of subscription? Because I'm going to try and get them to do some other things while we have.
Great. Ben just dropped in our pricing link.
Okay.
And so we try to be as transparent as possible. You probably fall into that researcher plan, which is our smallest.
If I do it myself,
yeah.
But I also could buy it for the organization.
Oh yeah, we'd love that too. So they can use the researcher plan. The thing about the researcher plan is it's really one project, right?
Okay.
That's one of the big limitations. The other big limitation, and we did not mention this at all because this is a webinar all about kind of crowdsourcing, is we do have some AI, what we call AI assist options, and we can't afford to offer those for the researcher plan, so you have to pop
Sure.
up. But we'll
Okay. Because
side
I'd like,
included in that.
yeah, and I can reach out to you separately if
Yeah,
I have
absolutely. Well,
individual questions. Because I'd like to write in a couple of months to be able to see if they have other things that we could do. I have one other quick question. And
Sure.
in there, somewhere I saw, data will be available as read only.
right. After your subscription is completed, we don't delete your material. What we do is we make your project read-only or inactive. What it means is you can't transcribe, you can't edit.
Got it.
You can read and you can leave comments.
And
but
you can export.
You can export.
Export. Okay. Because what I need to do is export a spreadsheet, which is why I was really drawn to your platform. Mike Corey recommended, I think you guys know Mike Corey, Mapping Prejudice. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
I work with Corey on Mapping Prejudice. I'm on their advisory board.
So he recommended this because I need to export a spreadsheet and
awesome.
Great.
looks great. I'm excited.
Awesome. Great.
Anybody else?
We can share our screen, show a couple projects. You are welcome to
lean on Jonathan because we met him in person at SAA.
You're also welcome as we go along showing things to ask questions in the chat or unmute yourself and ask out loud.
Yeah, we interrupt each other all the time. So
we think it makes us more entertaining, but
we have no choice in the matter, honestly.
Okay, let's
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I don't have any particular demo script set up. I just wanted to show off a handful of different projects here. So I'd like to start with a project that we're going to try to transcribe the page and just kind of show off what that experience is like. It'll give me a little minute. The problem is I had loaned to the page to transcribe at the beginning of the demo, and someone has been transcribing it all during the demo. And well, this whole diary is finished. So let's see if we can find something in this notebook instead. We'll go to contents and find a random page in here. Okay, so I'm going to transcribe the page. And oh boy, if anyone can...
we have AI assist if you want to try that.
We do.
I don't know what it says.
Something Madame
Joseph
Fish Creek, 118. Okay, let's try that, sorry. If we can't read something, do they say what to do? They do not give us instructions. So I'm going to do this. Madame.
ETHE.
I'm going to open the chat because it looks like somebody might have been able to.
Gervais,
Madame.
Joseph. Sure, sounds good. Especially.
Gervais. No,
where is this from? Oh, this is Canadian. This is the Queen's University Archive. So French Canadian seems totally reasonable, and the Riel RIEL resistance also seems possible. That says widow of somebody.
Was killed.
I think you got off when you typed in killed. Juked.
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I bet you couldn't do that again if you tried.
Yeah, those are surprisingly hard. Yeah, let's save here, all right.
No.
Widowed?
Widowed. She, maybe. I don't know what that says. Ugh. I would be trying our HTR assist here and seeing what
Okay,
AI
we'll
thinks
save
it
it,
is.
but, all right, one of the things I want to show is that we do save every version that people use. So you can see, here's an example where, Queen's University Archives uploaded the project January 7th. We just did that transcription, and then we added another little bit here. If we deleted, we would see something different. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and use the AI draft to see what it came up with.
Oh, agreed with you
Alright.
on Gervais, Madame Josephette.
Yeah, Gervais, Madame Josephette. Where's that money coming from? Is that actually in the image anywhere?
Yes.
Oh, hey, I missed it. Right, all right, that was pretty solid. Was killed at Batoche. He was a widow of Calixte. Calix. I don't think that's right. No. Batoche, he was a leading rebel. See her evidence. No.
I think EVIDEN. That could be evidence.
Number. Okay. DOJ. I'll buy that.
Same word.
Evidence of. Could that be Goulet? Okay. All right, we're going to actually take the first bits of this, and which I like, but I do not care for the last bits. I don't think this is done yet.
So we've only introduced this AI draft since November, and it's been a very interesting process to decide, we have three kind of core values when it comes to AI and from the page. One is it is always optional. You do not have to use it. You, as a project owner, you have to choose to say run AI on this. You, as a transcriber, have to choose to hit that AI draft button. We will never shove it down your throat because I find that very annoying. And a lot of our
and we also
AI
expose the fact that someone used this. So in our versions, we say, hey, somebody used AI here.
Right. Also in our, if you go to the collection screen, we kind of show all the activity that goes on in a collection. See recent edits, but one of
This
them.
is, yes, I use the AI draft feature here.
Right, and that's kind of our second value, which is transparency. If AI is being used, we want everyone to know it.
Now, the document that I planned on demoing, which someone was transcribing, was transcribed by Kufu, a volunteer, and they are not using AI at all, even though it's available to them. Free.
Yeah, no problem.
What AI engine are you using?
Yeah, so we have done tons of experiments with lots of different services. We have integrations with two different AI services. One is Transcribus, and that one we have to quote you separately on because it's more expensive per page. And then we did not trust any of the large language models up until November when Google released Gemini 3, and now they've released Gemini 3.1. And unlike, say, ChatGPT, it won't make things up. It will get things wrong, but it gets things wrong in the same way a human would get things wrong. Like we saw, like you might not agree with that page Ben was transcribing on what it chose for some of them, but it won't go off the rails and totally write something that is unfortunately seductively plausible because it is believable, right?
Yeah, and so we expose that this is an interesting example because we know that the person volunteer who transcribed this was not using AI. So we can actually compare the output from Gemini against what the volunteer produced. And you can see, all right, Google thought Marguerite. The users thought it was Marinite.
I don't see Marguerite.
Yeah, I don't either. I think like it's plausible. Marinite is kind of a weird name. That seems to be one of the biggest problems with this.
It
Some
could
of the
be itchy.
others
Yeah, it could
are,
be Marguerite. I don't know. This is the right.
It's so fascinating.
yes.
Hmm.
So the volunteer decided this was a 2. Jim and I thought it was a 3. I think the volunteer is right there. The volunteer typed this S is lowercase. Jim and I typed it as uppercase. I think Jim and I was correct.
But who
Hmm.
cares? Like, do you really need it
Yes,
transcribed
exactly.
in the right capitalization to be able to search it and use it
Right.
and read it? Yeah.
Number 2, again, capitalization difference, and then a little bit more down here. Right. So we're
So,
sorry. Yeah.
because I think the AI is a huge, it's so fascinating, and I love the example of using it for what it can do for us, but not letting it take us away. I'm guessing that I might reach out to you for some explanation and specifics because I know the granting agency we're going to go to is going to be um, resistant to the AI, so I would like some justification. I think it would really help.
Right.
And I'd love to, I also like challenging historians a little bit
Hmm.
to look at using technology in ways that help us and
Right.
not letting it take over. I mean, I totally understand why mapping prejudice doesn't use it.
Right.
100% agree with them.
Mhm. They've
I
done some
don't think
experiments though, even with what they've done to see if they could use it, right?
Right.
could it just helps us in my tiny little project. It will just take me, it'll make it much quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is interesting, we actually collect the reasoning that is a byproduct of this that Gemini produces.
Okay.
And it's really interesting to see the things that it does well and the things that it does poorly, right? These words indicate a connection to the Northwest Rebellion of 1885. Wow, that's
Considering this is a real resistance collection, and it does not
Yeah.
because we don't give it those
right.
details.
It got an image and a
Right.
prompt. That's it, right?
Huh.
But it did better than Ben on identifying that location, the BATOCHE, because it's like that's a place that's
Batoche, right,
important,
right.
right?
Yeah.
But it also, I think, got a handful of things wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Okay.
so it is really interesting to see how these kind of things work, right?
I'm
Right.
gonna
Yeah.
write about this in the grant. I think it's
Yeah. And send me a note,
okay.
and we will we've got some recordings of webinars that we did that focus
Okay.
entirely on both on two different aspects of how we use AI. One when we
Okay.
launched the Gemini 3 stuff, and one that's
Great.
about the response, what we call responsible AI and from the page.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I will.
So, as we mentioned, and I know Shanna's keen on this, narrative text isn't the only thing that matters and needs to be transcribed. So, this is an example of spreadsheet configuration. This is Cherokee Land's sales books from University of North Carolina libraries. And you can see that they've set this project up as a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
This isn't the kind of thing you're going to print out and read in bed. It's something you want to export. So they have mapped the columns more or less verbatim to the columns of the spreadsheet. Obviously, something like amount of sale, and that's implicitly split into dollars and cents. They've had to explicitly split that out. But people are transcribing these, and then these will be exported as a spreadsheet that has a row per row here, but all stitched together into either an entire document
Mhm.
for volume 3 or an entire document for the entire collection.
And you
And
and
just think of
well,
the data
yeah,
Oh
visualization you
yes,
exactly.
can do
yes.
with
So
that.
like Library of Virginia, when they do projects like this, I would actually say they have about three different derivatives that come out of it. So one, you can push these spreadsheets in what's called Markdown. It's a human readable
Yep.
text format that you can push into your digital library system. So if someone's searching for this person's name can find this document. That's all they really care about, right? Is proof that this person was here at this time or,
Yep.
the history of their family. And then they'll pull out a spreadsheet and add that to their digital library system so that you can do what we were kind of talking about. But then they actually take that exported spreadsheet and they pull that into what's called the Virginia Data Portal, which is where the state of Virginia publishes data sets. So they have a number of data sets from a project
Mm.
called Virginia Untold One of the ones that they created on From the Page is what's called the Free Negro Registers. So structured data about people who were free who had to register in antebellum Virginia. But again, really fascinating data to do things
Yeah.
with, right?
Very cool.
So, a variant of spreadsheet is form-based work, right? This is a project that the Library of Virginia is running, World War II separation notices, in which they basically have mimicked this government form. And they're asking people to fill this in. It's a multi-page form. You can see, the initial separation, and I spotted an error. We're going to fix that. That is Gibson. All right. And like everything else,
versions,
we do save those things in versions, so you can see my change from Ginson to Gibson there. Yeah. So
What else can we show you?
yeah, what else can we show
Inputs,
people? Yeah.
and how you get stuff in, how you get stuff out, some of the project owner settings, any of that.
Yeah, could you just show how you, because I'm meeting with this group to find out what format the pages, the digital scan is in. And I have a meeting I have to run in 4 minutes, but yeah, it'd be interesting just to show kind of how, if you can walk through quickly, or how the
So,
project manager interface looks.
so we keep the volunteer interface as simple as possible, but that doesn't really apply to project owners who have
No,
to
of course
integrate
not,
with a
no.
lot of different systems. So people can upload a PDF or a zip file of images directly to From the Page. If they have material in Content DM or the Internet Archive, they can import that just by pasting in a URL to the item. If they have other systems that support the IIIF protocol, which a lot of digital library and digital archives systems do, they can import that in via a URL as well. So
We
those
turn
are all
everything into images, right?
Right,
We think in
derivative
page
images.
images.
Right.
And we resize them for being accessible on, your grandmother's landline.
Yes.
Maybe not a landline, but still, we know that a lot
Yeah,
of volunteers
yep.
are not the most up to date.
Yeah. So in terms of how a project looks and how it runs, this is an example that has one document that's been uploaded, the one that looks kind of gross, and then the others are imported from
Oh,
Internet Archive.
okay.
As a project owner, I can see these settings screens. They let me to determine whether this is document-based or field-based. So is this spreadsheet or not? They let me figure out how we should show this to users. Can they download PDFs? Do they not, right? Do they have forums to discuss things in? We can also control privacy and access here. This is a public collection, but if we wanted to, we can make it private and limit access only to people who are authorized. We can also have additional people be owners of the collection, so they can upload data, they can export data, they can get those nightly email reports. Then I know we're almost at the end of time. This is also where you control quality, where you can say, this is vital records of living people. I want everything to be transcribed by one user, but reviewed only by these particular people, versus, hey, these are public records of newspapers. We're just fixing the OCR. Anything's better than nothing. Let's make review be optional so people can ask for pages to be reviewed, but they don't have to have pages reviewed, right? So there's kind of a spectrum there, and it's just a quality versus labor trade-off. And then in terms of pulling material out, we have a lot of different export formats.
Nice. Yep.
So we've got HTML, plain text, TEI. We have a fully featured IIIF API. And then for bulk exports, we've got Microsoft Word, PDF.
Mini PDFs,
Yeah,
mini
a lot of different
spreadsheets.
spreadsheet exports. Yeah, so those are
Okay.
all
That's Perfect.
Yeah, and we are almost at time, so if anyone has any more questions, let us know, because I will stop sharing my screen and try to be respectful of people's time.
Interesting.
There we go.
Oh,
That's awesome.
right, yes,
Again,
Calixed was, okay, well, the
AI
AI got it right. Huh.
Because it had
Cool.
It had that text, which I don't
Yes.
have.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you so much. This was really, really, really helpful. I am going to pop you an email later today to get a little more on the AI and just a couple little other questions. So
Yeah, and if anybody else wants to, we're always around. Email us via, there's a contact us link on the page. Also, support at FromThePage.com goes to both of us.
Or you can respond to the email we'll send out.
Yes,
with the
that
recording.
also
That
works.
also
Right.
works. So.
thank you so much. This was great. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.